Welcome to Friday 15 with Master B2B, your home and community for B2B e-commerce executives throughout the galaxy. Right, Andy?
Yeah, Brian, what's the deal with the microphone? This is the second week in a row.
Hey, man.
Like,
I'm a real podcaster, dude. Look at this.
you like the sound of your voice, apparently.
I do. For those of you who can't see, I got myself a fancy microphone here. It's a podcast style upgrading. Brian Beck here with Andy Hoare for our weekly Friday 15. We try to do these things in 15 minutes, and it never happens, but we try. Anyhow, welcome to Friday,
remind
Andy.
ourselves about what Yoda famously said. There is no try, only do.
I suppose that's yes, right. Yes, but Luke failed. Come on. He couldn't lift the X-Wing fighter out of the swamp. Yoda had to do it for him.
You're a little too much about this to make me question whether you're just a casual fan.
I'm not. It's yes. I like
Star Wars. You got the split wing fighter right behind you, don't you? It's sitting.
I do. Yeah, it's on my
model
shelf.
when you were a kid.
Exactly. I had all the toys. All right, folks. Welcome to Friday 15 with Master B2B. We got a jam-packed and fun topic we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into that, let's do our breaking news. Awesome. So, Andy, did you see this? This is a story in MDM from MDM talking about the manufacturing PMI hitting its lowest mark in 15 months. The PMI is a measure of performance of the industrial health of the industrial economy. It's widely regarded as a good metric for this. And, the article talked about really demand. So just a quote from it here: demand remains subdued as companies continue to show an unwillingness to invest in capital and inventory due to concerns about federal monetary policy, inflation, things of that nature. And this article hit right before the election. And it went on to say, hey, it almost doesn't matter who gets elected here, in the United States. This is an indication of where the economy is. And there's concerns about monetary policy from at the time, both parties, what their proposals were. So I think it's just another indication that the economy is, the core of it is soft. And they talk a lot about manufacturing. This is a manufacturing index. Any thoughts or reaction here, Andy?
I'm giving up on trying to predict where the economy is going to go. I mean, it's the old joke about economists predicted 12 of the last 10 recessions. It's like nobody knows what the hell is going on. The Fed, 1 minute they're lowering interest rates, next minute they're holding. 1 minute job growth is, we added 300,000 jobs. The next minute it's 20,000, and they're revising the numbers later. It's like, I just think the measurement techniques are perhaps outdated. And it's a gold standard that was, I think, aligned with the gold standard from 1973. I mean, I don't believe any of this stuff anymore because, for prediction's sake, I believe the numbers in the present are largely accurate, but we have this vacillating up and down, economy. And I think what you're seeing here, if I had to theorize, is that purchasing managers are, when they don't have visibility, they freeze like everybody else does. And I think what this is that, like, it's not that they're negative about the future; it's just they just don't know.
Right. Well, I think at least now there's some sort of clarity in where in the government and the U.S. and all those things. I think that'll help. And this actually plays really well, this article, into our discussion today. Our topic today is an excessive focus on cost limiting digital innovation in B2B. For a long time, Andy, B2B companies have taken a really conservative approach to investments, particularly large investments, and particularly digital investments. But there are benefits of a cost-based model as well when you think about, this is really about decision making. And should a company focus its decision making around costs and efficiency? So if we define this, of course, going to the new authority on everything, ChatGPT. So I asked.
Yes, we are trying to curry favor with.
Yes, we are. Yes. So ChatGPT, I hope you're listening. This is what ChatGPT says this is. Cost-focused decision-making is a strategic approach in business that emphasizes minimizing expenses and optimizing resource allocation as primary goals. In this approach, decisions are primarily based on reducing operational costs, enhancing cost efficiency, and ensuring that spending aligns strictly with budgetary constraints. It's very data focused. we're looking at efficiency. We're using data to determine areas where we can get more out of the organization. In some ways, PE follows this model, private equity, where they look to maximize the efficiency of the assets they've invested in. So
Yeah,
it's
by the way,
a
another group
yeah,
of people that generally does not, generally, not always, but generally does not invest heavily in technology because they're there to flip the asset
right,
in a
right,
certain period of time. And we've talked to tons of people who are on the other side of this, and they're like, "Hey, so we just got bought by a PE firm,
right.
and they're saying, lock it down, fix this, maybe replace that part of it, but we're not going to upgrade anything because they're hoping to just, you know, whip it into shape with the
Right.
existing technology and then just sell it to somebody else."
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to know, kind of as we were putting this together, folks, we tried to understand how many companies are kind of using this cost focused, approach in B2B. We found this interesting statistic from Forrester Research, and you know them well, Mr. Hoare. It says only 35% of B2B firms prioritize customer experience, meaning that the remainder still operate with a more conventional, cost focused mindset or a mixed approach. So this implies that almost not almost 2/3 of companies are using this cost centered decision making model for managing their business, and it has advantages, Andy. Right? I mean, there's it drives operational efficiency. It can resource optimization. It optimizes there, maximizes profit. It reduces risks. Right? It prepares a company for a down economy or a softness. It creates higher productivity, and it simplifies budgeting. It simplifies financial planning. There are truly some significant advantages here to this cost approach. Andy, do you see any others you want to
Yeah, I
mention?
think this is all true, but really, we like to analogize things on Friday 15. And this strikes me a lot as if you were a basketball or football team that focused heavily on defense.
Ah, hmm.
This is operational efficiency and maximizing this and this is trying to prevent the other team from scoring. And boy, you could argue people say defense leads to offense, defense wins championships. That's all true, but you have to score too, right? You can't
Right,
just play really efficient defense and win 0-0. So that
right.
to me feels like the issue. And to translate it back into the business thing, you can't save your way into prosperity. I mean, you
Hmm.
have to generate revenue. There has to be some offense here. And I think that's probably what the next slide is about, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, there are drawbacks, and we found this study by a company called Galileo, and a quote from it says, "Cost-centered companies often prioritize short-term cost savings over investments in innovation, research, and development. This approach can hinder a company's ability to introduce new products and services, respond to market changes, or adopt new technologies, which ultimately may reduce its competitiveness." Yes. So I mean, there's a feeling on this, and so we decided to ask our audience, Andy, on LinkedIn, what they thought of this issue. And check this out. We asked this question on LinkedIn: does a conservative, cost-focused approach prevent B2B companies from making long-term investments in important digital tools? 83% of our audience said yes, it does. So clearly there's a material impact here. And how does this kind of sort of come to life in the e-commerce B2B e-commerce world? Well, here's from our own or sorry, not our own research, but this is a study from logic.io that came out just very recently, a couple months ago. 60% of B2B websites deliver a quote generally negative experience. So this is turning into bad experience, in some ways you could make the connection here where it's, companies aren't investing what they should be. And we know this anecdotally, Andy, in talking to leaders in our space about, where have you historically been constrained, right? In terms of, your ability to execute and deliver a great digital experience. But this is going to translate to other channels as well. The sales team, the effectiveness of the organization, these digital tools, and perhaps the biggest one is that I think of when it comes to this is PIM and data, and challenges around. We heard this just yesterday from one of the practitioners we were talking to, Andy, that they've had a hard time justifying the ROI for investing in a PIM, and not just the PIM, but the data cleanliness, getting that product data ready for a PIM, because it's this, hey, this is a long-term foundational investment you have to make. And if you don't make it, it shows up in your website experience, in your ability to syndicate data, in your ability to sell your products, even for your sales force, your customer service team, your inside outside sales. It has anyway. So I think that's a great example. What do you think?
Well, when you see, it's like the old joke about the man with a hammer only sees nails. And not to get too philosophical here, but this is one of the issues when you see the business as about minimizing costs, then everything is defined as a cost. And so when you were talking about the data thing, what kept coming to my mind is how many people we talked to have said they see data as something to be managed, cost contained, risk reduced, etc. When in fact, I often argue, and I think you would agree, that data is what separates companies. The one thing that's unique to every company is its own data. That's it. Everything else can be built, borrowed, bought, or stolen. People, technologies, etc. But the data is really what separates one company from the other. And so why in the world would you see that as something that has to be cost contained? I'm not saying just spend freely on it, but this is the mindset shift that needs to take place. And there's no better example of companies that really understand the value of investment than in the tech world. And we've seen this double standard. We're talking beforehand about this. Amazon. Remember back in the day when Amazon was competing against retailers and Wall Street kept cutting them slack, saying, well, yeah, they lost money this year, but we believe in the company. Well, what they had to do eventually, because there was so much complaining and the retailers said, look, this is not fair. We have to live by one standard. They get to live by another standard. Finally, Amazon said, fine. What we'll do is we'll do investment cycles. 1 year we invest, the next year we reap the rewards, and then just alternate years. And you know what happened to their stock in those years? The years when they invested and their costs were higher and their profit went down, their stock took a hit. And then the following year, no other change to the business other than they just didn't invest as much. Their profitability went up, and guess what happened to their stock? Their stock went up. And so Amazon, I thought, was sitting around playing games going, fine, this year our stock will go down, next year will go up. We're not doing anything different except that we have investment cycles. So I would agree that many of these companies were treated unfairly. That's true. And the technology companies get a pass on this. But maybe there's a lesson to be learned here. The technology companies have to invest, because if they don't, they disappear. And so maybe the B2B companies need to think a little bit more like technology companies. I'm not saying become technology companies, but think more like it.
Right.
And think about investment cycles, because you can't just live your whole existence trying to save money and reduce risk, and to the point where you've got old technologies that don't work and things finally fall apart and then the business is over.
Well, I mean, continuing the Amazon analogy, I mean, when Bezos, when he founded the company, talked about becoming the Earth's most customer-centric company. And that's really what the sort of the flip side of this is focusing on, the customer experience. And could this be a better path? And certainly it has been for Amazon. McKinsey, some data from McKinsey here that I'm sharing. Companies that focus on customer satisfaction can see revenue boosts of up to 10 to 15% compared to the competitors who do not prioritize customer experience and prioritize other things like costs, right, as the primary decision making. So, yeah, and I mean, just look at Amazon's success clearly, but even things, this manifests, Andy, even in, again, data for Amazon, right? I mean, just the foundational elements that you need to succeed on a marketplace, companies are having a hard time investing in, and even in near-term investments. But what's fascinating is, maybe the tide is turning here a bit. In our own research, Andy, we found for our State of B2B e-commerce report this year, 83% of B2B organizations were planning to spend more money on digital in 2024. This is, as our survey was earlier this year. It was probably about, I guess, 5 or 6 months ago now. And so the budget maybe is opening up, at least based on our survey of our executives, right?
Well, you know why? I would theorize this has changed in the last couple of years. It's on a different trajectory. It still needs to be accelerated, but I would argue the reason why is because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, everybody who was doing any business, B2C or B2B, was
Mm-hmm.
forced to really invest in these tools because they needed to change the way the business operated. So suddenly they started thinking a little bit differently because of this massive exogenous event called the pandemic. Maybe that mindset should be more permanent.
For sure. Yeah, we don't want another global pandemic to move things along. But yeah, I mean, but what's interesting about this too, in the same research, Andy, we found that the investment, um, has to be more focused on ROI than ever. I mean, compared to 3 years ago, we asked this question. Compared to 3 years ago, the time frame in which I need to show an ROI on B2B e-commerce has 60+%, 65% said it's sped up. So does this put executives in a position where they need to invest in things that show a quick ROI, and they're going to direct their attention to those things versus making foundational investments in things like data or new e-commerce platforms or ERP upgrade. I mean, things that are more foundational for the business that might take 10 years to pay back, right?
Well,
So what are your
this
thoughts?
is the old mindset creeping back in, though. This
Yeah,
is. I know
right,
specific stories about people who've had this where they invested during the pandemic. They saw tremendous benefits with customer experience, et cetera. They even have online metrics and even
right.
cross-channel metrics to show this. But
Hmm.
some CFOs are thinking, well, we've got to go back to the old way of thinking, the
Sure,
pre-pandemic way of thinking, and we
sure.
have to have very specific ROI around this. I'm like, do you apply this ROI to other marketing dollars spent? Do you know how
Right.
much each one of those trade show dollars was worth? Do you know how much
Yeah.
every one of those catalog dollars was worth? Do you know all this stuff, TV commercials? Yet suddenly, all of a sudden, there's ROI on this. And I think part of the reason why is because there was such a massive investment in digital. They were catching up. And now the
Right.
CFO see it as a big line item, and they're like, not to demonize CFOs, but they're thinking, oh, we got to slow this down. No, maybe you need to speed it up, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe you
Well,
need
we
to
heard
speed
this.
it up. Maybe you need to think differently about your metrics,
Yep.
because I've heard this complaint many times from digital executives. When they go into meetings, the CEO
Hmm.
says, can you track this down to the penny? It's like, well, I can get pretty close, but those guys can't track it down to the $1,000.
Yeah,
You're
that's
going to
right.
hold me to a different standard. And the problem is, I don't have a problem with double standards, except that if you're hurting the business because you're holding these guys in digital to a different standard, and you're hurting the business as a result
Yeah, they
because you're
are.
demanding
Oh,
things that just don't exist,
right.
that's a big mistake.
Well, we heard this last week. We had Dan from Zest Dental on, Dan Stepchew, and he was talking about this in the marketing realm, wherein with all these privacy laws now changing, they can't track the results of some of their marketing spend on places like Facebook and Meta, Facebook, Google, and they're having, and he can't justify investments in marketing,
So
but it's
what's
a
the
double
right?
standard,
Right.
right?
So what does that mean? So the answer isn't, okay, let's find another way to measure this stuff, or let's maybe take
Right.
some qualified leap of faith based on a model. No, it's shut it down.
Right.
Well,
Right.
we can't measure any of this stuff in other ways, yet
Right.
we're still going to keep
Right.
doing that. Why don't we shut that down too? Again, it's the
Well,
double
it's been
standard.
successful for years, Andy. It's been successful for the last
That's
100
right.
years. And gotta
That's
keep going
right.
it that way.
And
So,
businesses never change, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
Blockbuster
exactly.
really was right, and Circuit City really was right.
Yeah. Hey, anyone wants to buy some Sears stock? Sorry,
I mean,
Sears. I know
this
you're
is the
still in
thing.
business.
We feel like we have to call what we see here, which is this double
Yeah.
standard hurts businesses, an old way of
Yep.
thinking doesn't work.
Yep.
Not to say just spend freely without measuring this stuff, but you have to recognize that you're living in a different world. And in a different world, you have to have different KPIs, different metrics, and a different mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. All right, folks. Well, we're up on our Friday. Well, past our Friday 15. Let's do a couple quick announcements. Number one, we are at B2B Online in Orlando next week. We have several executive dinners. It's going to be a great group joining us. If you are going to the conference in Orlando, that's November 17th and 18th. For those of you listening to this podcast before those dates, let us know. Go to our website, or just let us know. Just text us or something because it's in a couple of days. But we'd love to have you join us. And if you're at the conference, we'd love to see you. Also, as always, I like to remind folks about our forum, which is masterb2b.com, and click on forum. It is a practitioner only space. We have hundreds of folks in there every day. We're getting now comments and conversations. We just had someone looking for a systems integrator, for example, or solutions, or different, just asking questions of their peers. It's an amazing place. There's no cost, practitioner only, and you can go to our website to sign up. And as usual, I want to remind folks that our Friday 15 is available as a podcast on your favorite podcast broadcasting service, whether that's Apple, Google, Spotify, our own website, of course, also hosts it. We're also up on YouTube, LinkedIn, all over the place. We'd love to have you join us there and listen to we have a lot of episodes up there now, probably more than 50, I think. So anyway, Andy, been a good session, good conversation today. Any final words before we wrap?
Yeah, next week we're going to be in Florida. So we're
right.
going to be recording. We're going to do this from Florida. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. We're going to be wearing maybe wearing Hawaiian shirts, playing some hula music. That's Hawaii, dude. We can't do that.
We'll see.
I don't know, maybe there's a palm tree or something. We'll see. All right, folks. We'll see you next week on our next Friday 15. Thanks for joining today.